This is my first drone from 10 years ago, and this is the new DJI Mini Pro 5. We've come a long way. This thing has a 50 megapixel 1-inch sensor, 4K 60 frames per second, 32 gigabytes of storage with a ton of sensors, including forward-facing LiDAR so you don't crash into as many things. All of that under 249 grams. But the thing that actually interests me most about this is the dual native ISO fusion, which gets you 14 stops of dynamic range on a tiny little drone camera. Maybe you haven't heard of it, but it's how the Mavic 4 Pro has 17.7 stops of dynamic range, which is that's like the best of the best almost. That's actually insane, which they really didn't talk about a ton. I actually got confused when I did some like nighttime, completely dark drone shots with the Mavic 4 Pro, and there was just no noise. Like the shadows were so clean. I was like, what is happening here? And they actually had that already in the Mini 4 Pro, but I never reviewed that. So I'm curious how much of a difference there is. They might have actually like made the software or the image pipeline better. And my guess is they're probably not even gonna advertise this much. And I think it might be because it's just too technical for most people. They just don't understand. And this drone is kind of, it's marketed towards like the masses, like the beginners, everybody, the dad that wants to drone, the creators, everybody. And a lot of those people don't necessarily understand what dynamic range is, or it's not as flashy. Like everybody understands more sensors and active track. Show them the active track. And actually to me, that's like so not interesting. But dual native ISO fusion, that makes a massive difference to the image. And we're starting to see this from more companies like Blackmagic. Apple has been doing it on the iPhones. That's why their video is the best quality. I guess that's a controversial take, but we all know it's true. And what's happening here is basically a lot of new cameras, most new cameras nowadays have dual native ISOs. So I'm not gonna go into the details of how exactly this works, but basically there are two ISOs that work just as well. There shouldn't be any difference in the image between the two ISOs. So for example, on the FX3 that I'm using right now, we have dual native ISO 640 and then 12,800. 800 if you're using the Cine EI, but I think it's actually 640. Sony, please confirm this or deny. I don't know what's happening there. You basically have like the ISO for daytime and when you have a lot of light, and then you have the ISO 12,800 for when you don't have enough light. Now, what if we have these two perfect ISOs and we use them to our advantage to create one image? And so basically what they're doing is they're taking the 12,800 where the shadows are gonna be super clean, like so clean. They're taking that information and then they do the lower base ISO where the highlights are gonna be really clean, and they're taking the highlights from there and then kind of mixing the two to create one image. Dual native ISO fusion. Sounds like HDR video. Well, yeah, it basically is, except before with HDR, you would have to use an ISO that wasn't very good. And so like the image, and then also nowadays the software is so much better at combining these two. And this gives the effect of the sensor, even though this is a 1-inch sensor, it makes it look like it's a much bigger sensor because there's so much dynamic range. And that's what we get with the iPhones. Like the sensor is tiny. There should not be this much dynamic range. And because there is a ton of dynamic range, it makes it look like it's a much bigger sensor. And so that's the same effect that we're getting in these drones now, where even though it's a 1-inch sensor, which is still bigger than the Mini 4 Pro had, not by tons, but it's bigger. Now we can get 14 stops of dynamic range from that, which doesn't normally happen. Like if you look at some like Sony's with 1-inch sensors, like they don't have that much dynamic range. And part of that is it's a lot easier to do that with smaller sensors because there's a lot of data and processing happening when you're taking two different things, you're putting them together. Not like I know what's happening, but I know that it's very compute intensive. So to me, that is actually the most interesting thing that's happening in these drones now. And probably nobody's really gonna talk about it again because it's hard to explain, it's hard to understand. But if you compared footage and you really look at the image quality difference, That matters more than all of the other like obstacle sensors and all that stuff, to me at least. So let's look at some footage. Let's talk about the Mini 5 Pro new features, and more importantly, what drone should you be getting right now? Because there's a lot of different options. So I'm gonna tell you what my go-to is when it comes to drones. Like I said, we got that 50 megapixel 1-inch sensor now. We also have really easy to put on ND filters. You just like pop them on, really simple. We got 3 options. I like how easy that is. And the image, it looks fine. Like if you zoom in, if you really pixel peep, it's gonna be mushy. There's not a lot of detail. It's a 1-inch sensor. But again, we get all that dynamic range, which then makes it look like it's a much bigger sensor, a much more high quality sensor essentially. Is it as good as the Nikon ZR? No. Is it as good as the Mavic 4 Pro? No, obviously not. Is it good enough for most people? Yes, definitely. Especially if you're a casual user or you're like a wedding shooter or something like that. This quality is incredible. And to get it in a little drone like this versus this wasn't actually my first drone, I lied. This was my second drone. My first drone didn't even have a built-in camera. You had to put a GoPro on it, and then you couldn't like monitor the GoPro really. And so like you just hit record and then fly, and hopefully everything went fine. And then you bring it back and you're like, oh, it stopped recording because, of course, GoPro. Thank you. It was a nightmare. And then that one, I was in Norway. I was on a shoot. We were supposed to film 2 weeks with the tourism board. And first day, I kid you not, first day, we were flying and there was some like interference going on. I was like, oh, this is weird. I'm gonna bring it back. And I had tons of battery still. I had barely flown it. And then as I was bringing it down, it was like, I don't know, maybe 10 meters in there. It just all of a sudden shut off and just crashed. And so this is my second one I bought in Norway because I needed a drone. I had 2 weeks of droning to do. And yeah, I needed it. I wish I would have had this. This would have been so much easier. This is the kind of drone that everybody dreams of. I'm honestly not sure how much better this is compared to the Mini 4 Pro. I feel like you'd have to really pixel peep. But again, I'm curious how much have they improved their algorithms and the image pipeline for that dual native ISO fusion. I don't actually have a Mini 4 Pro, so I can't compare them, unfortunately. One of my favorite new features is 42 gigabytes of internal storage. I think the Mini 4 Pro only had 2 gigabytes, which is like kind of nice, but that's not really useful. 42 gigabytes, that's incredible. Every camera in 2025 and beyond should have some internal storage built in. It's so handy. If you forget a memory card, or if do you even need 2 card slots if you can have some internal storage? And then you can even get higher data rates. If you put in an SSD, then you can get higher data rates and get raw video and all that stuff, which might be, you know, harder to do with just SD cards, for example. It also turns on automatically when you start unfolding the legs like the Mavic 4 Pro, which is nice. The controller unfortunately does not. I think this is the exact same controller from the last one, which is totally fine. This is a great controller. You have a little monitor. It works awesome. Barely weighs anything. I love this. This is incredible. Also, I've had this idea that I wanted to let you guys know about or give me some feedback on. It would be more for local people. Basically, I want to kind of like, maybe it's every Thursday, we go and watch a movie together. So like I would just announce that we're going to go see Weapons Thursday, 7 p.m. at this theater. Come hang out, book your tickets, whatever. Super casual. We go and watch a movie together. I think the movie going experience is just, it's not the same anymore. It's so different watching a movie when the theater is packed with people and people are reacting, people are laughing, all that kind of stuff. It's just way more fun to watch a movie with a lot of people, and it'd be cool to see your faces. So I'm thinking about starting this like film club thing where we just watch a movie together every week kind of thing. Let me know. Is that interesting to you? We'll put out like a little like Google Doc or something where you can put in your details if you want to be a part of it. But you got to be in the Toronto area because obviously I can't be flying around every week for a movie. We also get vertical filming or taking photos, which it's a nice feature. Honestly, I never use that because I don't film drone shots for vertical content. Maybe that's just me, but to me, this seems like more of like a photographer feature that you can take photos vertically. It's great to have. To me, not that important. We've already had it in the Mini 4 Pro, so not a, you know, If you're on an older drone, great. But if you have the Mini 4 Pro, same. It also has 2x zoom, but it's just a digital zoom. It's not optical. I did a little comparison. I filmed this little church thing on a street here, and I did it in the 2x zoom, and then I did it in the normal 1x, and then we zoom in. So now the 1x is a 2x, and we're comparing 2x's. And then we can compare, and it looks exactly the same to me. So you're better off just doing the 1x all the time, because then you have, more image to work with, and then punch in post, because yeah, same. Active track, they say they've improved it and all that. I started testing it, and like almost instantly it almost hit a tree. So it was like really close. Maybe that speaks to how good it is, but I don't know. I don't think that the active track is that interesting to me. It just never works that well. First of all, it takes away control, which is a big thing if you're trying to get really cool shots. And then secondly, it introduces a variable of like uncertainty. I don't know what it's gonna do. It flies a little erratically at times. You don't really know what it's gonna do. And so like if there's stuff around, if there's people around, I definitely would not recommend it. I just personally don't trust it. Now, that being said, that doesn't mean that all of this tracking stuff is stupid. I actually fly very differently now when it comes to certain situations. For example, if you're following a car or a boat or a person, what I like to do is use this tracking stuff as kind of like an assist. And so I will select my subject, and then I will start flying and do my movement, and I will pretend like I don't have any assist going on. But this tracking just makes it so like if I mess up something really badly, it keeps things going. It keeps the subject in frame. It's an assist that's really nice for very difficult shots that might take a bunch of tries. And if you don't have a bunch of tries to do it, if it's like crucial that you get the wedding party leaving the venue, you got one shot at this. I think it's really nice to have this assist. What I do is I actually you can select a person or a car or whatever. There we go. And then think of this as kind of like a semi-auto, where you have the assistance of the auto tracking, but then you can still move the gimbal and move the drone around however you want. So for example, we're gonna do just a shot here like this, and then we're gonna fly up and over and around that. A move like that is like very complicated. Like I'm flying backwards, I'm flying side. It's hard to then keep your subject perfectly in frame. I don't always do this, but especially with like cars and things like that, it just makes it a lot easier to kind of gives you a little bit of assist, a little bit of computer assist. And sometimes even when you're in a place where there's trees and stuff like that, it helps you to be able to look at the drone instead of just at the screen. And you're still gonna, stay in frame because you have that kind of like auto assist going on. The active track is working when you're looking at the drone, you're still staying in frame perfectly. So I recommend trying to play around with that. It's quite interesting. Like that move right there would have been so hard to do the gimbal up and down, circling perfectly. Without that auto assist of keeping me perfectly in frame, I would have had to be flying so perfectly and so concentrated, and that took me no trying at all, basically. Super easy. I actually did a test. I was sitting on this little like concrete river lock. It's an abandoned place, whatever. And I just wanted to kind of orbit around me. And so I did it with the active track, and all I did was just go sideways on the stick, like move left, that's it. And it perfectly orbits around me, and it even keeps the flight path like really well. I just kept going over and over again, full speed, just flying around, did it great. And then I tried to do it manually by myself, and it was so much harder to like keep the same flight path, to keep me right in the middle. Just really tricky. So yeah, I think this tracking stuff is really interesting and important when you start realizing how you can use it. Going full active track, I don't use that stuff. I don't trust it. I feel like that's still more of a gimmick to sell. That's why I think the dual native ISO fusion is way more interesting to me. But that being said, I do fly differently nowadays. I do use this tracking stuff as an assist. Slightly more flight time on the batteries, but I mean, that's never been a problem. These things fly forever, it feels like. We also have a bunch of different sensors, including now LiDAR for the forward facing. If it's really dark, it's gonna be better at sensing obstacles. Again, a lot of times I just turn off all the obstacle sensing, And I think even if you don't, the sensor should be like a last thing of like, oh shoot, like I almost crashed. Thank you, sensors. What I'm scared of is that a lot of people will be like, oh, it's got a bunch of sensors. I can just fly however I want. And then they're not paying attention and then they end up crashing because the sensors don't always work. There's blind spots. There's times where they just don't do what they're supposed to do. Even though they are very good, DJI does the best in all this stuff, it still is something that I would not rely on fully. And so if I hear sensors, I'm like, great, I hope it someday saves me. But yeah, it's not that important to me. And if I were you, I would not rely on them fully. Pay attention, make sure you know what you're doing. Don't just fly and hope that the sensors are gonna stop, or assume that the sensors are gonna stop things. So I think that leads us to what drone should you be looking at in 2025? And for me, it's kind of like an all or nothing situation. Well, nothing is not the, like go full on or take it easy. And so this drone, the Mini Pro 5 is like the drone that you just take with you everywhere. You put it in your bag because it's so small, super lightweight, like this packs up, and it literally, it's 249 grams, so it weighs like nothing.
5 seconds.
It also powers off by itself. This is so small. You can put it into your camera backpack at like any point. This is the perfect drone for YouTubers, for creators, for social media people, for weddings, anything where like the quality isn't like, I need the best. And I think most situations for a lot of people, you don't need the best quality. And you're gonna end up using this a lot more because it's just so small and easy to carry around. So like this is the drone for most people to get. Now, if I want quality, if I really I care about the quality a lot, then I jump all the way to the Mavic 4 Pro. That drone is insane. It is way bigger, it is way more expensive, but like that drone is the drone. And so the way I would put it is like, if I'm going jet skiing with Peter, you know, at the lake here, I'm taking this guy. This is perfect. It gets the job done. It's incredible. Doesn't, you know, hinder my day at all. If I'm going to Iceland or Faroe Islands with Peter, then I'm taking the Mavic 4 Pro. It's either all or nothing. That's kind of all the in-between drones. I'm like, they're great, don't get me wrong. But me personally, I either grab this or I go full on with the Mavic 4 Pro. Especially because of the dual native ISO fusion. It is incredible. It just does so much of the heavy lifting to making your image way nicer. All right, that's it. Not a huge update to me. I think a lot of people are like, meh. But if you're on any DJI drone from like 4 years ago, maybe even 3 years ago, you will be blown away by how good this is. And so like if you just bought one last year or something, don't worry about it. You do not need to buy this. If you have a drone from like 3, 4, 5 years ago or more, if you still have one of these and you're lugging this around, no brainer. This thing is insane. So I appreciate it, DJI. But yeah, most people are gonna be like, cool, a little tiny update. Kind of. But I'm curious about that dual native ISO fusion. Did it get better? I don't know. You guys tell me. All right, bye.